When both pilots collapsed unconscious at 22,000 feet, 10-year-old Sofia Martinez was the only person awake on the military transport plane. With enemy territory below and fuel running low, this little girl had to use everything her Air Force father taught her to save 4 lives, including her own. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe. At precisely 0847 hours on March 15, 2024, the C-130J Super Hercules designated tail number 07-4632 thundered through the crystalline morning sky above the rugged terrain between Ramstein Air Base, Germany and Kandahar Airfield, Afghanistan. Flying at flight level 220, the massive 4-engine transport aircraft cut through the thin air at 22,000 feet, its quartet of Rolls-Royce AE2100D3 turboprops generating a combined 18,000 shaft horsepower. The aircraft was configured for Operation Angel Flight, a classified humanitarian medical evacuation mission carrying critical medical supplies, specialized surgical equipment, and a team of trauma surgeons desperately needed at Forward Operating Base Chapman in the volatile Paktia province. Captain Jake "Thunder" Morrison occupied the left seat, aircraft commander with 2,800 hours of C-130 flight time across 3 combat deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan. His hands moved across the instrument panel with the practiced precision of a concert pianist, monitoring engine parameters, navigation systems and communication frequencies. In the right seat, First Officer Lieutenant Sarah Phoenix Chin maintained constant vigilance over their route, her eyes scanning the multifunction displays that showed their progress across 8 time zones from the civilized airspace of Western Europe into the hostile territory of Central Asia. The flight had departed Ramstein at 0615 hours local time, with an estimated time of arrival at Kandahar Airfield of 1,320 hours Afghanistan time, a grueling 7-hour journey across some of the most dangerous airspace in the world. They were flying a carefully planned route that would keep them above effective range of most surface-to-air threats, utilizing established corridors that had been swept by intelligence assets and deemed relatively secure for military transport operations. In the cargo hold, secured behind military netting and surrounded by pallets of medical equipment, sat 10-year-old Sofia Ace Martinez, daughter of Colonel Maria Martinez, commanding officer of the 455th Air Expeditionary Wing stationed at Bagram Airfield. Sofia wasn't supposed to be on this particular mission, but a last-minute emergency at the base hospital had required her mother's immediate attention, and with no available childcare facilities and her father deployed on a separate mission, bringing Sofia along on what was classified as a routine logistical support flight, had been the only viable option. What made Sofia extraordinary wasn't just her presence on a military transport, it was what filled her mind. While other children her age were absorbed in social media and video games, Sofia had been consuming military aviation knowledge like a tactical supercomputer absorbing data streams. Her father, Master Sergeant Roberto Martinez, was a senior flight engineer with over 4,000 hours in C-130 operations across 4 combat deployments. From the age of 5, Sofia had been his shadow during off-duty hours, learning aircraft systems, emergency procedures, flight operations, and the intricate technical knowledge that separated professional aircrew from casual pilots. Dad always said the C-130 could fly itself if you knew which buttons to push and when to push them, Sofia muttered to herself, studying the laminated emergency checklist she'd memorized but still carried everywhere like other kids carried smartphones. 3 hours and 47 minutes into the flight, as they crossed from Iranian airspace into Afghan territory at precisely 1,134 hours, something went catastrophically wrong. Captain Morrison was in the middle of coordinating with Kabul air traffic control when he suddenly felt a sharp burning sensation in his throat, followed immediately by dizziness that seemed to come from nowhere. "Phoenix, you feeling?" Morrison's words slurred as his vision began to tunnel. The aircraft's environmental control system had been functioning normally throughout the flight, but now he was detecting a faint metallic taste in the air, almost like copper mixed with something chemical. Lieutenant Chin turned to respond to her aircraft commander and immediately noticed his pale complexion and the way his hands were trembling on the control yoke. "Thunder, you okay? You look..." Her words cut off abruptly as she felt the same burning sensation hit her respiratory system like a sledgehammer. Within seconds, both pilots were fighting to maintain consciousness as some unknown contaminant flooded the cockpit atmosphere. "Mayday, mayday, mayday, Kabul control, reach 47 experiencing crew incapacitation." Morrison managed to transmit before his head lolled forward onto his chest. Lieutenant Chen's hands shot toward the emergency oxygen masks, but she collapsed before she could complete the action, her body slumping sideways in the co-pilot seat. The C-130J continued its steady cruise at 22,000 feet, its autopilot maintaining course and altitude while its two-person flight crew lay unconscious in the cockpit. In the cargo hold, Sophia felt the subtle change in the aircraft's engine note that indicated something had shifted in the flight regime. Her father had taught her to listen to aircraft sounds the way musicians listen to instruments. Every change in pitch, every variation in rhythm, every subtle alteration in the harmonic frequency of the turboprops told a story about the aircraft's condition. Something was wrong. Sophia's 10-year-old mind processed the subtle changes with the analytical precision of a trained aircraft systems specialist. The engine parameters sounded normal, but there was something in the way the aircraft was flying. A slight irregularity in the pitch attitude, a barely perceptible change in the background radio chatter from the cockpit, that triggered every alarm bell in her comprehensive aviation knowledge. She unbuckled herself from the cargo netting and made her way forward through the dimly lit transport compartment, past the secured medical pallets and equipment racks. The cargo hold of a C-130 in flight was no place for a child to be wandering around, but Sophia moved with the sure-footed confidence of someone who had spent countless hours studying aircraft design and emergency procedures. As she approached the flight deck, she could hear the steady drone of the autopilot servos working to maintain course and altitude, but something was missing. There was no radio traffic, no conversation between the pilots, none of the constant stream of position reports and systems checks that should characterize a flight through controlled airspace over Afghanistan. Peering into the cockpit, Sophia's heart nearly stopped. Both pilots were slumped in their seats, clearly unconscious. Captain Morrison's head was tilted back at an unnatural angle, and Lieutenant Chen was slumped forward over her instrument panel. The aircraft was flying itself on autopilot, but Sophia knew from her extensive study of C-130 systems that the autopilot was not designed to handle complex navigation or emergency situations without pilot input. Her mind immediately shifted into the emergency response mode that her father had drilled into her during countless training sessions in their home flight simulator. "Always assess the situation first, Ace," she could hear his voice saying. "Aircraft condition, crew condition, system status, available options. Never panic, never rush, always think 3 steps ahead. Aircraft condition: C-130J maintaining level flight at cruise altitude, engines operating normally, autopilot engaged. Crew condition: both pilots unconscious, cause unknown, duration unknown. System status: all primary systems appeared functional, but without pilot monitoring, system failures could cascade rapidly. Available options: attempt to revive the pilots, try to contact air traffic control, or take control of the aircraft herself." The 10-year-old girl who had been studying C-130 systems since she was 5 years old carefully squeezed between the unconscious pilots and settled into the flight engineer's seat behind them. From this position, she could monitor all aircraft systems and access the radio equipment without disturbing the autopilot controls that were keeping them airborne. Sophia's small hands reached for the intercom system first. "Hello? Hello? Is anyone else awake back there?" She waited for a response from the cargo hold, but heard only the steady drone of the engines. Whatever had incapacitated the flight crew appeared to have affected everyone aboard except her. Her next action was to assess the pilot's condition. Both men were breathing regularly, and their pulse rates seemed normal when she checked their necks the way she'd learned in the Red Cross first aid course her mother had insisted she take. Whatever had caused their unconsciousness, it didn't appear to be immediately life-threatening, but she had no way of knowing how long they would remain incapacitated. "Okay, Sophia," she said to herself, using the calm, professional tone she'd heard her parents use in emergency situations. "You know this aircraft. Dad taught you every system, every procedure, every emergency checklist. You can do this." Her first priority was establishing communication with air traffic control. She reached for the radio microphone with hands that were surprisingly steady for a 10-year-old facing the most critical situation of her life. Kabul control, this is Reach 47, emergency traffic." Her voice was clear and professional, carrying none of the hysteria that might be expected from a child in such circumstances. The response was immediate. "Reach 47, Kabul control, go ahead with your emergency." "Kabul control, Reach 47 has experienced crew incapacitation. Both pilots are unconscious cause unknown. Aircraft is currently maintaining level flight on autopilot at flight level 220. I am 10 years old and I am the only person conscious on this aircraft." The silence that followed seemed to stretch for eternity. Then, "Reach 47, did you say you are 10 years old?" "Affirmative, Kabul control. My name is Sophia Martinez. My father is Master Sergeant Roberto Martinez, flight engineer, and my mother is Colonel Maria Martinez, 455th Air Expeditionary Wing. I have extensive knowledge of C-130 aircraft systems and emergency procedures. In the Kabul Air Traffic Control Facility, Controller Master Sergeant David Radar Thompson felt his blood turn to ice. 23 years of military air traffic control experience had prepared him for many things, but never for a 10-year-old girl attempting to fly a C-130J Super Hercules through some of the most dangerous airspace in the world. Master Sergeant Thompson immediately activated the emergency response protocol, simultaneously alerting his supervisor and initiating contact with the nearest military airfields capable of handling a C-130J emergency landing. Within minutes, the crisis response network was fully activated, with communications links established to Bagram Airfield, Kandahar Airfield, and U.S. Central Command Headquarters in Tampa, Florida. Reach 47 Kabul Control. We are coordinating emergency response for your situation. Can you tell me the current status of your aircraft systems? Sophia's eyes scanned the comprehensive array of instruments and displays that monitored every aspect of the C-130J's operations. Kabul Control, all engine parameters are normal. Fuel quantity shows approximately 4,200 pounds remaining. Hydraulic systems showing normal pressure. Electrical systems operational. Environmental control system. She paused, studying the air conditioning and pressurization displays. Environmental control system may be the source of the crew incapacitation. I'm showing normal cabin pressure, but there may be a contamination issue. Thompson was amazed by the girl's technical knowledge and professional demeanor. Reach 47 Outstanding Assessment. We're bringing in technical support specialists. Can you tell me your current position and autopilot settings? Kabul Control, GPS navigation shows us approximately 47 nautical miles southeast of Kabul, maintaining heading 240 degrees, altitude 22,000 feet, airspeed 250 knots indicated. Autopilot is engaged in navigation mode following the programmed flight plan to Kandahar. The technical accuracy of Sophia's report was remarkable. She was providing information with the precision of a seasoned aircraft commander, despite being less than half the height required to see over the instrument panel without standing on her toes. Meanwhile, at Bagram Airfield, Colonel Maria Martinez was being briefed on the situation involving her daughter. The combination of maternal terror and professional crisis management was nearly overwhelming, but her military training took precedence. Within minutes, she was coordinating with the base's most experienced C-130 pilots and aircraft systems specialists to develop a plan for talking her 10-year-old daughter through one of the most complex aircraft operations imaginable. Colonel Martinez's voice came through Sophia's headset with the calm authority that had earned her command of an air expeditionary wing. Sophia, this is Mom. I need you to listen carefully and do exactly what I tell you, okay? Hi, Mom, Sophia replied, her voice carrying just the slightest tremor that revealed she was, after all, still a 10-year-old girl in an impossible situation. I've been maintaining aircraft systems and monitoring the autopilot like Dad taught me. You're doing perfectly, sweetheart. I have Chief Master Sergeant Williams here with me. He's our most experienced C-130 systems specialist, and he's going to help us get everyone home safely. Chief Master Sergeant Bob Wrench Williams had over 6,000 hours of C-130 maintenance and flight engineer experience. His voice joined the radio frequency with the steady confidence of a man who had solved aircraft problems in combat zones around the world. Sophia, this is Chief Williams. Your dad has told me about all the training you've done with him. I need you to be my eyes and hands on that aircraft. Can you do that for me? Yes, Chief Williams. What do you need me to check first? I need you to look at the environmental control system panel. There should be a series of switches and indicators on the overhead panel above the pilots. Can you see them? Sophia stood on her tiptoes and studied the overhead panel. I can see them, Chief. There are switches for bleed air, cabin pressure, and air conditioning. The cabin pressure looks normal, but there's a yellow caution light next to something labeled Pack 2 Flow. Williams felt a surge of hope. If the contamination was coming from a malfunctioning air conditioning pack, isolating it might allow the cabin air to clear and the pilots to regain consciousness. Sophia, I need you to turn off the Pack 2 switch. It should be labeled Pack 2, and will be a toggle switch. Turn it to the OFF position. Sophia's small fingers found the switch and moved it to the OFF position. Immediately, the caution light extinguished, and the airflow sound in the cockpit changed slightly. Switch is off, Chief. The caution light went out. Excellent work, Sophia. Now we need to get some fresh air circulation. Can you find the cabin air circulation switches? Working methodically through the emergency procedures, Chief Williams talked Sophia through isolating the contaminated air conditioning system and establishing fresh air flow throughout the aircraft. Within 15 minutes, both pilots began showing signs of regaining consciousness, though they remained groggy and disoriented. Captain Morrison stirred first, his eyes opening slowly as he tried to comprehend why he was slumped forward in his pilot's seat. What happened? Sophia's voice came from behind him. Captain Morrison, you and Lieutenant Chen were unconscious for about 20 minutes. I've been flying the aircraft with help from Kabul Control and my mother. Morrison turned around slowly, his vision still slightly blurred, and saw the 10-year-old girl standing behind his seat with a confidence and competence that seemed impossible given her age. You've been flying the aircraft? The autopilot has been maintaining our course and altitude. I've been monitoring systems and coordinating with air traffic control. We isolated a problem with the number 2 air conditioning pack that was causing contamination in the cockpit. Lieutenant Chen was also beginning to regain consciousness, though she appeared to be suffering from the same disorientation and nausea that was affecting Morrison. Both pilots were clearly in no condition to resume flying duties immediately. Chief Williams' voice came through the radio. Captain Morrison, this is Chief Williams at Bagram. How are you feeling? Morrison keyed his microphone with shaking hands. Chief Williams, I'm conscious but significantly impaired. Nausea, dizziness, blurred vision. Phoenix is in similar condition. We're not going to be capable of flying this aircraft for at least another 30 minutes, maybe longer. Understood, Captain. Sophia has been doing an outstanding job managing the aircraft systems. We recommend continuing with her as primary systems monitor while you and Lieutenant Chen recover. The situation was unprecedented in military aviation history. A 10-year-old girl was effectively serving as the aircraft commander for a C-130J Super Hercules flying through hostile airspace, while 2 incapacitated pilots slowly recovered from chemical exposure. 40 minutes after the initial emergency, Captain Morrison felt well enough to resume basic flying duties, though his motor skills were still significantly impaired. The decision was made to divert to Bagram Airfield, where Colonel Martinez was coordinating the emergency response. Sophia, I need you to help me reprogram the autopilot for an approach to Bagram, Morrison said, his respect for the young girl evident in his voice. Sophia's fingers moved confidently across the flight management system, inputting the approach procedures that she had memorized from countless hours of study. Captain, I've loaded the ILS approach to runway 35 at Bagram. Decision height is 200 feet, approach speed is 145 knots with full flaps. Morrison stared at the navigation display, amazed by the accuracy and professionalism of her work. Sophia, that's perfect. Better than perfect. You've just programmed an approach that would be challenging for experienced C-130 pilots. As they began their descent toward Bagram, the aircraft was escorted by 2 F-16 Fighting Falcons that had been scrambled to provide support. The fighter pilots reported that the C-130 appeared to be flying normally, with no visible signs of distress or system failures. Reach 47, this is Falcon 11. We have you in sight and will escort you to landing. You've got a lot of people on the ground pulling for you. Sophia keyed the radio. Thank you, Falcon 11. It's an honor to have you with us. The F-16 pilot was struck by the professionalism in the young girl's voice. The honor is ours, Reach 47. You're showing a lot of courage up there. The approach to Bagram Airfield was complicated by mountain terrain, adverse weather conditions, and the constant threat of ground fire from hostile forces in the area. Captain Morrison was flying the aircraft manually, but his motor skills were still compromised by the chemical exposure. Sophia, I need you to call out our altitude and airspeed, Morrison requested as they descended through 5,000 feet. My vision is still not completely clear. 4,800 feet, 160 knots on glide path, Sophia reported with the precision of an experienced flight engineer. Localizer centered, gear down and locked, flaps full, before landing checklist complete. Lieutenant Chen, who was slowly recovering, managed to add, emergency equipment is standing by on the runway. We've got crash trucks, ambulances, and fire suppression ready. As they descended through 1,000 feet, Morrison felt another wave of dizziness that threatened his ability to control the aircraft. Sophia, if I pass out again, can you? I can't reach the controls from back here, Captain, but I can talk you through it. You're doing great. Just keep the wings level and follow the glide slope. The C-130J crossed the runway threshold at exactly 145 knots, its massive landing gear touching down with a firm but controlled impact. Morrison applied the brakes and reverse thrust. bringing the aircraft to a stop about halfway down Bagram's 11,800-foot runway. Emergency vehicles surrounded the aircraft immediately, medical personnel rushing to check on the crew while fire trucks stood by as a precautionary measure. As the engines wound down and the propellers stopped turning, Sophia finally allowed herself to feel the full weight of what had just happened. The story of 10-year-old Sophia Ace Martinez spread through military aviation circles like wildfire. Within hours, news of her actions had reached the highest levels of the Pentagon, where senior officers struggled to comprehend how a child had successfully managed a complex aircraft emergency that could have resulted in the loss of 4 lives and a multi-million-dollar aircraft. The investigation into the environmental control system failure revealed that a faulty air conditioning pack had been introducing trace amounts of industrial cleaning solvent into the cockpit air supply, not enough to cause immediate incapacitation, but sufficient to gradually impair cognitive function and eventually cause unconsciousness. The fact that Sophia had been seated farther aft in the cargo compartment had exposed her to lower concentrations of the contaminant, allowing her to remain conscious and functional. Captain Morrison and Lieutenant Chin both made full recoveries within 48 hours and resumed flying duties after completing additional medical evaluations. Both pilots credited Sophia with saving their lives and requested that she be officially recognized for her actions. The recognition came swiftly and from the highest levels. 6 months later, at a ceremony at the Pentagon attended by the Secretary of Defense and the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, Sophia received the Air Force Commendation Medal, the youngest person in military history to receive such an honor. The citation read, "For meritorious service while serving as acting flight engineer aboard a C-130J aircraft during an in-flight emergency resulting in crew incapacitation. Airman Martinez demonstrated exceptional knowledge of aircraft systems and extraordinary composure under pressure, directly contributing to the safe recovery of the aircraft and the preservation of 4 lives." Chief Master Sergeant Williams, who had talked her through the emergency procedures, became one of her strongest advocates. In his recommendation letter for her early admission to the Air Force Academy's preparatory program, he wrote, "This young woman demonstrated aircraft systems knowledge and emergency response capabilities that exceed those of many seasoned aircrew members. Her performance under pressure was simply remarkable." But perhaps the most meaningful recognition came from an unexpected source. The Professional Aircrew Association created a new award in Sophia's honor, the Martinez Award for Emergency Response Excellence, to be given annually to aircrew members who demonstrate exceptional performance during crisis situations. Sophia kept the medal in her bedroom, right next to the technical manuals and aircraft recognition charts that covered her walls. She was already planning her path to pilot training, though she knew she had years of preparation ahead of her. Master Sergeant Roberto Martinez returned from his deployment 3 weeks after the incident. Finding his daughter in their garage workshop, surrounded by C-130J technical manuals and emergency procedure guides, he simply said, "I heard you had an interesting flight while I was gone." Sophia looked up and smiled. "Dad, I just did what you taught me. Listen to the aircraft, understand the systems, and never panic when lives are on the line." "And that," her father replied, "is exactly why they call you Ace." Years later, when Lieutenant Colonel Sophia Ace Martinez commanded her own C-130J squadron, she would tell new aircrew members about the day she learned that age and size don't determine capability, knowledge, training, and courage under pressure do. She would become legendary not just for what she accomplished as a 10-year-old, but for how she used that experience to become one of the Air Force's most respected pilots and leaders. In the crew briefing rooms of C-130 squadrons around the world, her story is still told to new pilots and flight engineers as an example of what's possible when technical expertise combines with calm decision-making under extreme pressure. And in those briefing rooms there's always someone who asks, how did a 10-year-old know so much about aircraft systems? The answer is simple. She listened when her father taught her that flying isn't just about moving controls, it's about understanding every component, preparing for every contingency, and never giving up when lives depend on your knowledge and courage. Some heroes wear flight suits and wings. Others wear school clothes and carry aviation manuals instead of toys. Sometimes the difference between life and death comes down to a 10-year-old girl who spent her childhood learning that every switch, every system, and every emergency procedure might someday mean the difference between coming home safely and not coming home at all. The C-130J that Sophia helped save that day was repaired and returned to service. A small plaque installed in the cockpit reads, "Emergency Systems Operation performed by Sophia Ace Martinez, age 10, March 15, 2024. Courage and competence have no minimum age requirement." This story is dedicated to the military children who grow up surrounded by aviation excellence and develop extraordinary capabilities through exposure to professional training and technical knowledge. While this story is fiction, it honors the real dedication of military families who pass their expertise and values to the next generation, creating young people capable of remarkable achievements when circumstances demand their best.